Americans are not happy with the mainstream media. A New York Times-Siena College poll published earlier this week found that nearly 60% of registered voters see the media as a major threat to society, while 25% see it as a minor threat. 15% of respondents view the media as being no threat at all.
Some voters have turned to social media to get their news, but with increasing censorship of speech on these platforms, questions remain as to whether they're a better option. Barstool Sports founder and CEO Dave Portnoy shared his thoughts this week about the future of free speech in America. Here he is on Fox Business.
Ye West is buying Parler. Trump's got Truth Social. Musk will probably take over Twitter. Where's free speech headed in America these days?
Well, I guess you can look at either way. I mean, they're all buying it for the different platforms because they think they got regulated a little bit on it. And I don't think that's a bad thing. It's always a fine line in the sand with any of that stuff. Who gets to decide what's over the line? Twitter has plenty of examples of really bad people who don't get banned, and then they'll kick Trump off. Yeah. And I don't care who you feel on either of them, but who gets to make that decision? And the truth of the matter is, technology is now like freedom of the press, but they're privately owned. So it's a slippery slope.
Yeah, I think that's kind of an unexpected, maybe shouldn't say unexpected, but there's a level of nuance there that I don't think is often in these conversations. There's an acknowledgement that even though I think a lot of these very wealthy individuals who are buying up these platforms are doing so because they're rightly critical of the lack of transparency that is associated with the moderation decisions at the major existing platforms, you are kind of jumping out of the frying pan into the fire because now you're reliant on the goodwill of individual billionaires who also don't have any accountability structure in place other than maybe they don't want to get ratioed online to do the right thing.
Right, and his point about these being, they are business. These are businesses. In some sense, we talk about free speech because we want there to be free speech on these platforms. They have made commitments. They've said they're going to be free speech platforms, even before someone like Musk comes in, who has a much more firmly stated in what he said, at least. We'll see what it looks like in practice. But Zuckerberg, Dorsey, previous owners of these social media sites, Zuckerberg's still a current owner, have articulated these same promises, and it sounds like it would be better, so we want it. But these are private businesses. They're media companies. They're just media companies. Their business model is selling a curated user experience to advertisers, which doesn't always align with any principle of free speech whatsoever.
No.
They're trying to sell advertisements.
It's a business. It's capitalism. I'm sorry. This is a fundamental issue. I think the free speech framework in a lot of ways is not the right framework to be demanding here. Because to be honest, nobody is actually wanting these platforms to be laissez-faire, wild, wild west. They would be unusable pornography kind of wastelands if that were truly the way these were run. And Mark Zuckerberg's initial insight into Facebook and what made it so popular was that it was going to be a website that, unlike MySpace, you had to have a college email to log into at first. There was going to be a standard format for every page. It wasn't going to be colors and music starting to play when you clicked on somebody's profile. There was a certain sanitized professionalism to the whole thing, and obviously it got opened up over time.
Not the Facebook, because it's cleaner.
Look, I was there. I was in those trenches. I was one of the first 1,000 or so people to ever have an account because I was in college at Harvard at the time when it was invented as a freshman. And I remember the changes over time. And that insight was what everyone got. Oh, wow, this is something that you can be friends with your mom on. That everyone's the uniformity and the sanitized nature of it was literally the draw. And I think we're all playing ourselves when we pretend as though we don't want some kind of moderation. The question is that moderation going to be non-ideological? We don't want these platforms advancing one particular ideology because we're concerned it's not our own ideology.
Is it going to be fair? And is it going to be the rules consistently applied? Because it is a better, social media has been a good environment in my view, for all the condemnations it gets, or accusations that it has, through the election to Trump in 2016 and then through the election to Biden through various suppression. I find it possible a lot of times to have more freewheeling conversations on social media than take place within the narrow confines of the mainstream media, which absolutely and increasingly wants to tell you what to think and wants to tell you what to think within a very, very narrow, some semi-progressive, but not left, certainly progressive cultural, social framing that is not well represented in the rest of the country, and then misses some important stories relating to COVID, relating to Hunter Biden, related to other things. I wanted to put up on screen, and I think this was the right place to discuss it, this tweet from Ben Collins. So he's on the sort of misinformation beat for NBC News, which I think this is a great example of like the misinformation people who are obsessed with the misinformation, so often misinform their own audiences. He writes that betting markets are illogical because he's looking at how if you bet on individual states, it would look like the Democrats are going to win the Senate, but more people are betting on Republicans to win. But that's just like that's wrong in terms of statistical analysis. Like even if each of the Democratic seats has like a 60% chance, that doesn't. But they need all of them, so it would still be like there's some basic statistical there's an easy answer for that question. Even in the realm of expertise. The
odds that if you flip a coin, it's going to be on heads are 50%, but the odds that you flip a coin 10 times and they're all going to be heads is much lower.
Exactly, it's that kind of thing. So, maybe I'm picking on him a little unfairly. I'm sure we all have tweets every now and then that are not super smart.
No, all my tweets are good.
All your tweets are good.
They're perfect tweets.
But nobody's seeing them because you're being so vigorously suppressed on the platform. But my only point being is there's a certain kind of mainstream reporter for a mainstream or liberal outlet who is just so worried about people seeing information that is wrong. But the mainstream media misinforms all the time. Sometimes by accident, sometimes not maliciously, but they have not, to me, demonstrated an ability to get a lot of these stories more right than just person on social media.
Yeah, that is true. And look, if the mainstream media wants to earn back some credibility, they need to start having more diverse panels, ideologically diverse panels on these kinds of shows. Bring people from the internet world onto the TV. Stop pretending like the people that you have on there have knowledge or credibility or authority just because they have, a master's in this thing or worked for a Senate campaign 20 years ago for 1 month. Like the gap, the perceived authority that people have when they go on the mainstream news it's malarkey. You can go on YouTube, a lot of these streamers, they are brilliant. The people who call into my call-in show have the depth of historical knowledge that sometimes makes my head spin, and I'll ask them, like, you spend all day you driving an Uber, you're an EMT, or I'm like, what is your background? How do you know all of this? And I think that's part of the issue, that there's been a real lack of respect for the audience from these news people, and they presume that having the little series of 3 letters before or after their name gives them the authority to talk down to people and tell them what is and isn't true.
It's the worst.
Yeah.
Don't like it. Hate it.
Well, we'll have more Rising for you right after this.